Hello, everyone. I am Kevin Kelly. He is Paul Gerard. Thanks so much for listening. We are Gerard and Associates. This is the GNA Way podcast. Hey, so Paul, I got an interesting phone call from a NAEMSP medical director working on his, I think it's the fellow in the American College of Paramedic Executives, or whatever it is. But he described a situation, and I wanted to talk to you about it to get your thoughts. And the situation that he describes is he's the medical director for a number of small ambulance services out here in Western Mass. He's having a difficult time getting data from the agency. He describes what I would describe to you as a separation of powers issue. We have quality improvement auditors acting as the judge, the jury, the executioner. And it's not being brought, the accurate data is apparently not being brought forward to the medical director. And I got to tell you, from my concern, it sounds like it cuts into this whole notion of peer review. What are your thoughts? You seen this before?
I have, as a matter of fact. So we get that kind of frequently from medical directors when we start with client agencies, where we generally send a fairly robust number of calls for medical director review to get their opinion on things. And probably 9 out of 10 times, the medical directors will say, we weren't getting this level of information before as far as calls to review and give an opinion on. And in most cases, they're happy that they're actually being asked for their opinion about this stuff so that they can weigh in. And what I think a lot of it revolves around, in some cases, it's because the agency just doesn't want the medical director to see a lot of the bad stuff. And we've actually been hired by agencies where they didn't like that we were sending so many calls to the medical director because they thought it would paint them in a bad light with their medical director. So for those agencies, there was a bit of an avoidance thing. But for most agencies, especially smaller, the issue is a little more practical, where I think sometimes people, the QA coordinator in these smaller agencies, don't truly understand the purpose of the audit process and what they're trying to accomplish. So in our system, we actually look at calls and say, could somebody read this run report and think that it meets the level of a category 3 or 4 call, which is a medium or a high level, high probability of an adverse patient outcome. And if somebody could make the argument that whatever was done or not done for the patient could rise to that level, we automatically send that to the physician medical director for their opinion, for a second review of that call.
And we have a data-driven, compassionate accountability swing coach type methodology that we use. So we are doing teaching, coaching, and mentoring at the individual level with that provider at some point during his interaction with the medical director. We have the ability to counsel and take the sting out of things. Is that right?
Right. So, again, the way we do it, and the way we do it, it can be done differently. It doesn't have to be done our way. But we've over the 17 years we've been in business, we've kind of tried a lot of different methods, and we've found that this seems to work best to get providers to modify behaviors. But with the coaching thing you're mentioning, in-house we actually separate the CQI process into various workloads. So we'll have an auditor whose only job is to audit calls, and then we'll have a CQI coordinator whose job it is to discuss those calls with the provider, who's independent of the auditor, so that some of the bias is weeded out of the process by getting multiple opinions. And so kind of going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, a lot of times, especially in smaller agencies, we have one person doing the whole job. That person reads a run report, and they make a determination that there's nothing really terrible with this call, so I don't need to send it to the medical director. In some cases, because they don't want to bother the medical director by sending them a lot of, somewhat frivolous stuff, or what they perceive to be frivolous stuff. But in other cases, as I mentioned, it's because they just don't want the medical director to see what's going on. So the problem with the auditor/coordinator reviewing this call and sending it, making the determination to send it to the medical director or not to send it to the medical director, is that in a lot of cases they are acting as the medical director by saying, this is not important enough or anything that I think is so serious that we have to have that medical director review. So they're acting as the medical director by saying, this is okay, it's not a big deal, I'll let it pass through without a whole lot of action on it from a QA perspective. So by separating out those functions, you get a little bit less of that coordinator or auditor acting as the medical director.
Well, the medical director has significant involvement in the CQI program of these ambulance agencies. The gold standard thus far is the Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services, and they have a whole standard dedicated to medical director involvement in protocol development in the CQI process and identifying trends and tracking trends and right sourcing the CQI program and coaching up or coaching out, and not having the medical director intimately involved is, in my opinion, not good judgment. Bypassing the medical director is just simply not the right thing to do. Having a good relationship with the medical director, being able to rely on that medical director, very important. Now, that being said, you can't have a medical director with cognitive or implicit bias that is going to favor one of the providers over another. That creates inherent problems as well that have to be dealt with. But cannot have an EMS system that with a quality auditor, regardless of the level of acuity of the call, bypasses the medical director. Can you imagine that medical director getting sandbagged when he's finding out in the newspaper or on Facebook or on TV that his provider that he was supposed to be getting data on had a major malfunction that medical director could have been involved in before anything ever happened? Can you imagine that, Paul?
Yeah, I can imagine it because it's happened. So usually it's not so much on the front page of the news thing. It doesn't quite get that far. Usually there's an OEMS investigation or a lawsuit that somebody's looking into. And the first notice that the medical director gets of this potentially errant call is OEMS calls up and says, hey, this was reported to us and we're conducting an investigation and we want to review this call with you. And you don't want to have that situation where your medical director is sitting in on this meeting with the providers and your medical director is saying, yeah, provider, you should never have done this. I can't believe you did it, right? So that's way past the opportunity to prevent something from happening. And now your medical director is on the other side of the fence and he or she is, putting the hammer down and agreeing with, OEMS or whoever made the complaint. So really, wouldn't it be better if the audit process picked up on whatever that behavior is or was earlier before it became a problematic call, forward it to the medical director and said, are you okay with providers doing this behavior? And the medical director say, no, I don't want that to happen. I want you to do X, Y, and Z on these calls. And then fix that before it becomes an issue. If you just flag the really bad calls, then you miss all those opportunities to learn what your medical director really thinks about some of the subtleties of providing emergency medical care to patients. And again, you don't want that first interaction to be, yeah, I read this run report, OEMS is investigating, I agree with them, you shouldn't have done this, how come you did it? And then it turns into a bad situation. So don't play medical director. Get the medical director's opinion. The vast majority of medical directors actually want the opportunity to weigh in on some of this stuff and discuss medicine on these calls. On occasion, you do have some medical directors who don't want to be bothered, right? Don't send me a lot of stuff. Just send me the people that get killed. Somebody killed somebody. Send me those because I have to deal with them. But other than that, I don't want to really deal with the stuff. You probably need to consider a new medical director if he or she doesn't want to put that effort in. Because remember, they're putting your agency at risk by not taking their responsibilities as medical directors seriously and participating to the degree that they should be participating to ensure that high quality patient care is going on.
All right. Well, thanks, Paul, for illuminating me on this. I get these calls not too infrequently, and I thought this was pretty interesting. All right. I'm Kevin Kelly. He's Paul Gerard. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll catch you the next time. On 5.